guys, this is Janaki, and this is Bathsheba here, and together we are Catamancy Tarot. So welcome back. We're excited to be here again, and so today we're going to be doing another new tag. This is a fun tag from Candy over at Soul and Soil, and this is the top 10 Curiosity Cabinet decks, and so at first I didn't think I had this, but then I went through my decks, and there's a couple really weird ones, a couple that are just kind of like historical oddities, and so I'm going to be taking you through my top 10 here. So let me go ahead and flip this camera around and I'll show you what I got. Alrighty, so since it's a Cabinet of Curiosities day, I thought we should have some friends with us. So today we've got our little duck friend. This duck looks like you might like it in a Cabinet of Curiosities, and we've also got this squirrel, which was a gift from a friend's grandmother, and it no longer works, but it used to light up all cute. And then I've also got this tiny little gopher skull that I picked out of I was doing a geology field day in college and I found a cool gopher skull. So we can have this squirrel and the gopher skull, and he can be contemplating his own mortality there. So those are our little guides for today. Also, I've been, my last couple videos, I've been sort of showing you some progress on some oracle cards I've been working at. And so this is what the final product looks like, all painted up. So this is the clogged drain. I think it turned out well. I'm happy with it. The next step, which I haven't gotten to, is to do scanning and then lettering and stuff like that. But I'm not bothering with all of that at this point. I'm still just plugging away at making the cards. So what is a curiosity cabinet? So when I was thinking about this, the first thing that came to mind was sort of high Victoriana. And I don't have a ton of Victoriana decks, but I do have a couple, so I thought that would be a good place to start with. The first one is the Antiquarian Tarot by Divine Muse. I think this is, I think it's the first edition, I'm not sure. But this is a sort of very classic, sort of high Victorian feeling deck. So you can see it's a little bit of a sort of, she's taken these old vintage photos and manipulated them a little bit, added you know, the suits. This is a deck, I like to keep it around because it feels like if I'm going to do a seance, this is the deck of cards I want to use for it. Some of the images make me laugh. In particular, there's one guy's hairdo that is sort of priceless. I'm gonna find him. I think it's this guy. Wow, so much hair. So much hair. But yes, this feels like a very curious deck of cards, and I thought it would be a good one to kind of start with the theme of Victoriana. So yeah, that's my first curious deck. My next two decks are also sort of keeping in the Victorian theme, but they take it in a couple different directions. So the next is it's an oracle deck, and it's the Fanhood Pack by Edward Gorey. I found this before I ever even started collecting tarot cards and oracle cards. I found it for like $3 in a thrift store, which was a really fun find. But this is sort of takes Victoriana to the sort of creepy end of things, and I love the images. The guidebook is kind of hilarious. It in its sort of sparsity, and I really enjoy it. I don't, one thing I will say about a lot of my curiosity decks is I don't actually use them that often. I ran into someone in LA who had this as a tattoo without the words, just that image, and I recognized it and I was like, "Hey, by any chance is that an image from this deck?" And she was like, "Yeah, totally." And I was like, it was a cool thing to recognize, and also made like a really cool tattoo. I like the little insect friends, but just to give you sort of a sampling of what the guidebook is like, we'll do a little bibliomancy here. We'll do the plant. Let's see if we can find our plant friend to join us for this. There's the plant. It was up first. The plant. July. Tics. Sexual indiscretion. Impetigo. Loss of intellect. Misplaced confidence. Writhing sickness. Loose ends. Palsy. Assailed credit. Dissolution. Scandal. Worms. So I kind of love that. It's fun to have a like playfully dark oracle deck. And so I think it definitely gets to be in my curiosity cabinet. The next one I've got is also sort of playing around with this Victoriana thing, but it's the fantastic Menagerie deck from Baba Studios. This is a deck that feels so fancy. But I think it's definitely got that curiosity cabinet vibe. You've got all of these critters. Mine's in order because I haven't used it much this year. But it does have a little bit of a dark sense of humor. It plays around with some humorous situations, and sometimes it does get a little dark. It is playful. This is a deck that I feel like it would be a fun deck to have as a child, even though it's I don't know, I think I would have had a really fun time with this deck as a kid. I don't have a lot of animal decks, and that's something I'll talk about. I'd like to make a later video about, but so this is kind of my animal and people's clothing. It's the closest thing I have to an adorable deck also. I know people have been sharing their adorable decks. I love these cats being serenaded. So yeah, that's my next curiosity cabinet video. I feel like it would be right at home. And so the next couple decks, this is where things get perhaps a little stranger. The next deck I have is also an animal deck, but it's an vintage deck. I use it as an oracle deck, but it's not meant for that at all. It's a deck that I found scoping eBay, and it's a kids flashcard Know Your Animals deck. But I feel like in a cabinet of curiosities, you've got to have some like weird taxidermy stuff. So this is the closest thing I have to that vibe. So I love these images. Let me pull them out here. So yeah, it's a deck from 1961, and it's just got these cutout pictures of animals from what looks like an illustrated encyclopedia or something like that. And then if you look on the back, it's got some information. So here we can read about the musk ox. It's a shaggy and dangerous looking animal, which I can, I can relate to that, right? Lives along the Arctic coast. So it just gives, you know, a little info, and I feel like that's sort of enough for me to go off of. But I just love the sort of the quality of these images. I find them to be like really, really beautiful. And it's also, I just love how like badly done the deck is. Like it's clearly someone cut these out and just glued them on there and didn't, you know, didn't really think twice about it. So this is definitely a Cabinet of Curiosities deck, because you've got to have, it gives me that, you know, old-timey animal safari, Victoriana vibe. And some of them are just like weird and blurry, like this one. There's also, you know, a kid's been at, like this was clearly owned by a kid. You can tell by like all of this like additions and tape on the box. Also, the poor giraffe has been cut out and glued back together. So, you know, a kid has clearly had at this deck, which I really like. I think it's fun to have something that has a little bit of history like that. So yeah, this was a weird eBay find. So for the next couple decks, when I think of Victoriana, the other thing I think of is colonialism and the legacy of colonialism during the Victorian times. And part of like the Curiosity Cabinet is, you know, these explorers or colonialists going to the colonies and bringing back weird things. So my next three decks, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I'm also an anthropologist who's studying sort of the history of tarot and how it relates to South Asia, particularly India. So the next deck I have comes in this box. And this is a deck that's also from 1961. I haven't seen anyone else with this one. This was another like weird eBay find. And when it comes in a box this good, like, you know, it's got to be something. So this is a deck that I don't use, but it's absolutely a curiosity. It's one of the strangest decks I've seen. So this is a tarot deck, and it has separated out in two different sizes. Let's unravel this. Also get a load of this, these gilded edges, all of 1961. I didn't know they had that back then, but, you know, still on trend. So the majors and the minors come in these two different sizes, which is really odd. And this is a deck, this is the only information I have about it, and it comes in all wrapped up here. There's this little piece of information, and then we have this sort of pamphlet, which is old and worn. And so this is the Tarots of the Orient. So it's making some claims here that aren't true about the history of tarot, but it's really interesting to me. Yeah, out of the east came the prophets, and with them they bought 22 reading discs. The gypsy marked them with his signs, also the Italian, French, German, Spanish, Moor, English, and many other printers, until the cards lost the old symbols. So what it's kind of doing here is that it's playing on tropes of Orientalism, of sort of the exotic, in order to kind of make claims about the power of the tarot. And I find it to be kind of fascinating. It's an interesting relic. It's also, you know, I wouldn't, you know, there's not a lot of actual credence in there. and it's playing, yeah, it's playing on very romanticized and colonial tropes. But the cards are like really sort of strange and interesting. So each of them has an image. It has, the majors are either red or black bordered. They'll have a title. Our Fool is the clown here. And we see some of the traditional images with the crocodile and the dog and the Fool here. And we'll also get a date, which is interesting. So, you know, here we see Magi, sign of Rama, which doesn't really mean anything. It's just sort of playing on these sort of Oriental tropes. And it also comes with these, I don't know if these are initials. It could be, since they look like they're the same. The priestess, we have Saraswati, earthly love. And so the instructions here, I'll show you guys in a bit, but this deck is meant to be read in a very specific way. And so all of these cards, like you're meant to use the Empress as the significator card, and it has a very, very elaborate and contrived way you're supposed to read them. So here for 7, we have the warrior, the Kshatra, which is a caste, the warrior caste. So yeah, this is a very interesting sort of historical object that I'm glad that I just stumbled upon. It wasn't really something I was looking for. It was rather something that just, you know, popped up, and I jumped at the chance to find it. I think it was sold by a guy who also, look at this devil. This devil is so good. I think the person who was selling this also sold just like baseball cards. So it was a really, really interesting find. I love this moon card. And this, some of the images from this deck are clearly referencing another deck that I'm going to show you in a little bit. That has to do with the Egyptian tarot. Reincarnation, Twice Born, the Crown of Brahma, music. So those are the majors. And then the minors are also equally as curious. Again, different size. So the minors have the, you know, traditional card suits. They're numbered. They come with an image and a little message. And so some of these are taken sort of, like here we have the coffin. It's sort of like clearly referencing Lenormand. And some of them are just doing its own things. So the way you're supposed to read this deck has to do with positionality. And then we get some cards that just say, do not use this card for reading, which I'm not really sure why you would have that in there. And then here we have the Genie of Sky, which again, I'm not sure what that's really referencing. I guess that's like a Joker. I love a good poppy. Another critter. Yeah, so here another image would be familiar to Lenormand readers, but this is a Genie of Fire. So yeah, it's a really, really curious deck. I haven't ever actually tried to use it in a reading. I'll show you guys now the way, the instructions for reading this deck, because they're really quite something. So it comes in, it's the same pamphlet again that we get, but on the back side, this is the spread you're supposed to use. So you're supposed to use all 78 cards in order to do a reading. So it's kind of evocative of the sort of the Lenormand Grand Tableau. Here, as I mentioned, depending on the gender, you would use Emperor or the Empress as the main card, and then you would lay out all of these different rows. So you would have the 13 minor tarots, the small cards, and then a row of 7 major tarots, or the large ones, and you alternate 13 and 7, 13 and 7, 13 and 7, and then you're supposed to read using all of these lines how these cards relate to each other, which, you know, starts to make sense if you go back and you read, you actually read what the instructions on the card say. So if this 5 of hearts is near card 34, 35, or on right side with card 70 or 71, travel by water. So it seems like all of these cards have different sort of conditionalities which would like trigger them. So this is like a really fascinating deck. I've never actually sat down and done this. If you guys are interested, maybe I would consider like trying to do a big spread, but mostly I just have it wrapped up all nice and secure and trying to just kind of look at it as an interesting sort of historical relic of the history of cartomancy, and it helps me think about the history of particularly the history of Orientalism in tarot. The next deck I have also falls under this same sort of category. This is a deck called Tarot, the Persian Tarot of Madame Indira. This is from the publisher Grimond, who's a French publisher. This deck was published 20 years after the one I just showed you, so this was published in 1981. And similarly, you have, you know, with the history of sort of fortune telling, there's often sort of drawing on tropes, particularly from places like the Persian Tarot of Madame Indira, so drawing on Persian or Indian or Egyptian, or there's also a lot of history with the Romani people, or you know, gypsies as they were called, even though that's not the preferred term these days. Gypsy is actually a bit of a slur. And so there's a lot of Orientalism going on in certain periods of cartomancy. And so some of these decks are in my library, not to use, but to kind of like document that sort of history. So this is also a curious deck in that it comes, the deck is divided into different parts. So with the first part, and none of these cards are titled, but you can look them all up in the guidebook, you get a number of images of animals or people or whatever this is. You have a treasure chest. And so it's all this sort of like fantasy, Arabian land. You know, you've got images of paradise, you've got boats, and so all of these cards you can look up and will have different messages. The next section of this deck is the part I don't understand the most, and this section I just call the owls. So you've got one owl, you've got an evil wizard with many owl faces, you've got 3 owls, you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've got 7 owls, even more owls, and then you've got owl faces with flames, and those are the owl cards. We can ask the guidebook what's up with the owls. Yeah, the all owls. I guess all of the owls just, yeah, it doesn't say too much about why owls. But I guess they bring different kinds of messages. And so birds are often seen as message bearers. You can even see that with the peacock who had, you know, a letter in its mouth, right? And then you get into the suits. So you get a couple court cards, you get 3 court cards, and then you only get some of the numbers. So you get 10, you have 6, you have 5, and then you have 3 and 1. And it goes through that same with each of the suits here. And then we have spades. So this is another really curious deck that I keep around, mostly for reference and not really for using. It has an interesting guide book. It similarly, it's one of those decks that have sort of old school cartomancy rules where you're supposed to, cards only mean things if they come in certain combinations or pairs. So yeah, I haven't learned how to use this deck for divination, but it is in my curiosity cabinet for sure. The next one, and this is the last of the series on sort of decks I have to sort of study to understand Oriental tropes in the history of tarot, and this is a deck, let me grab the original box, one sec. So this is the Egyptian Tarot of Saint Germain. This is a mass market deck. It's a Spanish deck, so it's all in Spanish, but you can find it and it's easily available. But this is I like the coloration in this deck. It's really fun. It's all in Spanish, but I don't really mind too much. This is the Emperor. I think this is the cubed altar. And so this is another, curiosity cabinet deck, because it helps me think about the history of tarot. So this is the Moon card, La Penumbra, which I like as a title. And so if we go back and we pull out, oh, it was here all along. I'm just really dumb. Okay. But you see what I'm talking about? These seemed like they are referencing one another, which I think is really interesting. I love both of these moon cards. I love the sort of jackals, the hidden Scorpio, or the scorpion here. I feel like the Thoth deck also sort of references this kind of imagery in the moon card as well. So, yeah, definitely a curious chapter in the history of tarot. This is the card, or the Egyptian decks that emerged sort of in the, I'm going to have to do a little bit more research to pin down the date, but the Egyptian decks all sort of emerged in the 1800s, after you get people postulating about the French occultists who postulated about the Egyptian origin of the tarot, is when you get people who start to produce decks like this and claim that this deck is what the original tarot was. I like the minors in this deck. It's a pip deck, but you get some interesting shapes going on. There's some interesting uses of geometry as well. It is a very curious deck. There's been a lot of different sort of editions of Egyptian decks that have come out sort of by US Games or by other publishers, and this is kind of my favorite ones. I don't use this for divination too much. Again, I use it as a sort of historical study, cabinet of curiosity kind of deck. But yeah, so that is my Egyptian Tarot by Saint Germain. I think that was like the like occult pen name of a random American guy who decided to go by that name in order to publish this deck, in order to sound more mystical. So that sort of ends that section of decks. The last few decks I want to show you are just kind of weird. So this is now we're just getting into weirdos. This is a deck I found from a Danish card collector, like playing card collector, and he had this and a few other vintagey decks that he was selling, and I jumped at it. So this is a Russian tarot, magical cards tarot, for cartomancy and patience. It's a side opener. Weird. Wow. These are the backs. My favorite thing about this deck that I'll show you is it comes with some really fun title cards, which I can't read Cyrillic, so but the rest of the deck is in English as well. It's got these sort of ornate gold borders. This deck was published in the 80s, so it has some like 80s quality. I love the people in this deck. My favorite thing about it are the like weird royal people. Look at these guys. How weird are they? They're like lady sphinxes? I'm not even sure. I love this hermit. I love that hermit a lot. I love the sky, the sort of quality of the 80s illustrated skies. The green hanged man. We've got death. Look at this devil. It's kind of like very psychedelic. The star is really pretty. I love the green man in the moon here. Got the sun, judgment, and the world. So my favorite thing about this deck is the court cards. I want to know, I feel like it's like poking fun at Russian royalty. Like, look at her. This Queen of Rods is just this sort of like very flouncy, look, she's playing cards, but she got bored and she knocked them off. Like, she doesn't care. She's bored. We've got the, maybe that's St. George and the dragon. Look at those pantaloons. Goodness. And this is definitely a pips without feeling deck. No feeling in these pips. But then look at these guys. Look at this King of Cups with this wave. Like, who are these people? I feel like they kind of poke fun at royalty, or that's how I like to read it, at least. It feels like that's kind of what's going on. Then we have the King of Swords, that green. Oh yeah, we got all of this green sky. So here again, we've got you know, is that Judith with cutting off the heads from the Bible. I just, yeah, I really dig these court cards. I don't use this deck. This is definitely, these people belong in a curio cabinet. She's got this little Cocker Spaniel. Yeah, charging off in the clouds. Then you've got your page with the letter, with the message. Yeah, definitely a weird collector, weird find that I stumbled across. And yeah, so that's the Russian tarot. The next one I want to show you is also just a really weird one. This is the Tapestry Tarot by Yvonne Jensen. This is from US Games. I'm not sure. Let's see if we can find out when it was published. So I think it's from, let's find out, 1995. So this is by a woman, and I modified this deck significantly. This is the original size of the cards, which are quite large, and it has sharp corners, and I've trimmed it down. It had like huge borders, and I took those off. So just know that. And so this is a tapestry deck. It's made, these are the backs. She has the artist has a relationship with Hathor, and so all of these cards are sort of in dedication to Hathor. And they're all, it's all sort of tapestry collage. And so here's our Fool. So all of them kind of look like little dolls. Here we have the Magician. And so you'll see numbers, and she's got her own sort of astrological correspondences for these, which I didn't really understand. But this is definitely a curiosity deck. It's not for everyone. The doll faces are just really, I find them to be quite strange and endearing. So we've got our two little aspirants here with the 5, so the Hierophant or the Pope. We've got our Lovers card, and we've got the snake and this tree person. We've got our Chariot here. Yeah, this is the Strength card. Or no, this is Justice, so 8, but we've got our, you can tell with sometimes it's not always clear, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward. But I love how weird it is. Like, what is going on here? We've got our Death card. Look at this. This devil is just covered in hair. Weird little puppets. Yeah, guys, I don't know what to tell you. And it also comes with some extra, 2 extra Arcana cards. I don't remember off the top of my head what they are. But then we get into the pips, and the images are different sizes for those. But for the most part, this is like a very traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, as much as you can do with this sort of like fabric and puppets going on. But it's really quite a curious deck. So then we get to some of our court cards. We have the Page, the Knight, the Woman, and the Man of Wands. So another just like very, very curious, very curious. You've got to have some weird dolls in your cabinet of curiosities, right? It wouldn't be the same. Look at this one. Look at these like giant sleeves and tiny little hands poking out. It's so weird. Look at these guys. They're kind of creepy, but I like the blue. I think it's really interesting. I haven't, I'm not surprised this deck wasn't a huge commercial success, but I find it to be really endearing, and really playful, and just a little oddball, definitely. So that is the Tapestry Tarot. The last deck, I think number 10, that I wanted to share, which is also another just weird oddball deck. This is the Cards of Chaos by Aya Rosen. So this is an oracle deck by the same creator who made, I think, the Black Lily Tarot and the Wind Rose. So I got this off of Make Playing Cards, and the version I got is kind of off-center, which bugs me, but it didn't bug me enough to actually complain to them to get it fixed. But this is another kind of curiosity oddball deck. It doesn't come with a guidebook. It's the Cards of Chaos. So I guess the idea is that you're just supposed to like, it's chaos. It's a cow smoking a cigarette with some flowers. What does it mean? Number 5. It's up to you. You get to decide. And then there's some cards in here that are kind of the, witch hunt. That's a, easy thing to kind of engage with. But then you have some things like you have, she's just sort of throwing a bunch of symbols at you, and like, it's really up to you to figure out what they mean. I really like her illustration style. And I thought I would like working with this deck more than I actually use it. But it's a cute little oracle deck that is very, again, very curious indeed. So I wonder if, it might be a fun project with a deck like this for you to kind of like write your own meanings for each card. But that's, look, I love a good poppy. I like this card a lot with the teeth and the city. It reminds me of one of my favorite restaurants, weirdly enough. Not that they serve teeth there or anything. But yeah, I haven't gotten around to kind of like sitting with each card and thinking up what it might mean to me. But maybe that's the antithesis. This is my favorite card probably in this deck. It's just this like brave little rat who's survived a shipwreck and is sitting on the captain's cap and is going home, or whatever you think this means. But yeah, definitely a weird little guy that I think deserves to be in the curious cabinet. All right, folks, those were my curious little decks. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling on about some of my weirder decks. Most of these I haven't really used that much. I guess for me, part of what it makes it a cabinet of curiosity decks is that it just sits on the shelf and collects dust until I, get them out and, think about them or use them for study or something like that. So until next time, I'll see you guys later. Oh, these are my toes. Sorry, I'll remove those from your presence.